Today we're going to talk about how COVID-19 is attacking companies and businesses. My name is Phillip Shero, and I'm a doctor. Not a medical doctor, I'm a doctor of organizational leadership. My PhD is from Regent University, and I help business leaders and CEOs to lead well in crisis. And we are in one right now, aren't we? You've probably already seen visualizations and examples online of medically how the coronavirus affects a body and how it affects the lungs and breathing and creates problems that cause hospitalization, needs ventilators, and even death. I want to talk to you about how COVID is affecting your business, how it's affecting your leadership and your communication. And we're going to talk today about one of the biggest ways that it's affecting you, and that is by interrupting the natural feedback cycle. So before we get into this, let me acknowledge there are some businesses that have had to shut down completely, furlough workers or release employees, and that is really tough. But I'm speaking to businesses that are still in operation, even though they may have restrictions or mitigations or other things that they're doing to try to stay healthy, but they are essential services. So this could be not only hospitals, it could be public services, police, fire, it could be construction companies, manufacturing companies that are deemed essential and allowed to continue working, but they've had to mitigate. And one of those big mitigations is sending people home to work remotely. When you do that, you are going to break and interrupt the feedback cycle. What am I talking about here is not the kind of feedback where you would sit down with an employee and give them constructive feedback on their performance. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the daily, almost unrecognized feedback that would be happening as you move around the office, pop into somebody's door, meet them at the water cooler, have a meeting, or sit around the table after a meeting's done to talk about something else. You are constantly, as a leader, getting feedback. But now that you've sent everybody home to work remotely, most of that feedback has been changed or cut out completely, and it's affecting your company. There are two major effects of interrupting the feedback cycle that I want to talk about. First of all is delayed response. Now, if you've been on a Zoom call or an other video conference and someone's audio or video has lagged behind the speaker, you know how frustrating that feels when you're trying to listen or you start to respond, but then they cut in because the video or the audio is lagging. It makes it very difficult to respond when that delay is happening. Or think about maybe a more serious circumstance of a drunk driver. Because of the influence of alcohol in their system, their brain has a delayed response in processing visual information, auditory information, and their vestibular, their balance or sense of where they are. So when they're driving, they overcorrect or they react too slow. Or by the time they're reacting, the situation's changed and their reaction is actually the wrong reaction. It can have fatal consequences because of that delayed response. A similar thing is happening right now with leaders in companies that are trying to operate in this new environment with lots of stress and pressure, but also people working remotely. Information is delayed in getting to you as a leader, and I mean all kinds of information that would come naturally, the things you would hear and pick up on, ways you would read a situation. That's being delayed, which is delaying your response. Things are happening with your managers and your employees working remotely, but you're not going to find out about it nearly as quickly. And by the time you found out, that situation could be worse, or there could be a whole new situation, and your leadership is delayed because of that feedback being interrupted. The second impact of the feedback cycle being interrupted is distorted perceptions. So we've got one, delayed response, and we've got two, distorted perception. So what do I mean by distorted perception? Your brain is wired to create a perception of your environment that is drawn from all the pieces of information that you take in. Your brain does this automatically, and as a leader, you've probably honed this skill to quickly grasp what's going on, read the situation, read the temperature of the room, and know what to do. But in a situation where your feedback cycle has been interrupted, you're not getting this constant feedback from your direct reports that you would have in a physical environment. Your brain is still building a perception, but it's building it with less information. And that's going to create distortions because your brain will pick up the information that it can find and overlay that onto reality. So you could pick up information from the media, from what you're watching or reading online. You could pick up information from how you are responding. And normally that would be tempered with your view of how everyone else is responding. But right now, that data point of how you react to the crisis can color your thinking of how everyone else is reacting. And you may think unconsciously that they're having the same situations or the same challenges you are, when it could be very different. The third area that your brain may pick up this information from is from one single case, where you have one employee or one direct report, one manager on your team that gives you some feedback about what's going on, and you multiply that across everyone else and assume that they're having similar situations. That may or may not be true. So when the feedback cycle is interrupted, you've got a delayed response and you've got distorted perceptions. All of these are affecting your ability to lead well, to make good decisions, to communicate appropriately and well. This is part of how COVID is attacking your company. So what can you do? What you need to do to respond to this is to focus on improving feedback everywhere you can. And I'm going to give you 3 specific examples. Once again, this is not feedback where you sit down to give somebody performance feedback or you're even asking how something went. This is collecting data and information so you can lead well. There are 3 things that you need to be doing. The first is increasing the frequency of your interactions with key employees. Everyone that reports directly to you and some from other layers or departments of the organization so you get a more well-rounded picture. Maybe before you got by with one meeting a week or every other week, now you need to have daily connection points with the people that are reporting directly to you. Increase the frequency. In some cases, maybe even morning and evening. Now, these can be short, but you need to be touching base with them and receiving that feedback through what they tell you about what's going on. Secondly, you need to turn on the visuals. Use visuals for receiving feedback. If you're doing a Zoom meeting or Microsoft Teams or WebEx, whatever it is, turn on your video and ask them to turn on their video. That gives you more rich data on their facial expression, their mood, their body language. It helps build that connection, and it helps both of you pay more attention because the human brain is designed and wired to respond to faces. If you're only hearing a voice, your attention may be distracted. You need to focus in and collect all of that data that would normally just happen subconsciously throughout the day. So turn on your video. And third, you need to ask clear questions right now. Before you have a meeting, sit down and think of 2 or 3 questions that you want to ask that will solicit the kind of information that you need. Ask how meetings are going, how their conversations are going with particular employees or suppliers or customers. Think about where do you need feedback and information, and ask the question that will generate that feedback. So it's really important that you craft those questions to be clear and get the information that you need. So quickly to review, how is COVID attacking your company? One thing it's doing is interrupting the natural feedback cycle, causing delayed response, distorted perception, and that's affecting your leadership actions and your decisions and your read of the situation. What you can do to combat that is to focus on improving feedback everywhere you can by increasing frequency of interaction, turning on the visual, and crafting clear questions to solicit the feedback that you need. I'll be back soon with more tips on how you can lead through crisis and help your organization thrive and survive.